What are the biggest what ifs in Dallas Mavericks history? We'll run through the top 10 on our what if special coming up on the DLLS Mavs podcast. Hey, what's up, DLLS Mavs Nation? It's your man, Kevin Gray, alongside Mavericks beat writer Tim Cato, Mavericks analyst Bobby Curler. We, of course, are DLLS Mavs, your favorite guys, cover your favorite team, even in prime time. The top 10 what-ifs of Dallas Mavericks history. We'll get into the biggest what-ifs in Mavs history as we count down from 10 to 1. Some of those memories might be a little painful. They might bring back some other memories. We'll get into all of that here over the course of the next hour. Tim Cato, what's going on?
What if DLLS Mavs never existed?
The world would be a worse place. The only answer.
That's
Thankfully, we don't have to wonder.
Yep.
That's very true. Corella, what's going on?
Feeling good, man. Feeling excited to get in a time machine and relive some good memories and relive some good what ifs and also to relive some trauma.
There will be, unfortunately, some of that through the course of the next hour. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe to DLLS Sports while you're here and do the same for our podcast. Wherever you get your podcasts for free, just search DLLS Mavs. Let's jump into it, gentlemen. It is What If Week here at DLLS Sports and across the All-City Network. Each team going through its biggest what ifs in their franchise's history. And, of course, we have the privilege of covering the Dallas Mavericks, a team that won a championship back in 2011, made the finals back in 2006, came back to the finals back in the 23-24 season. A lot has happened in the 40-plus year history of the Dallas Mavericks. Let's jump into the top 10 what-ifs, gentlemen, of Dallas Mavericks history as voted on by us and by you. Let's talk about it. Let's get into it. Number 10, Tanner. What if the Dallas Mavericks had drafted Giannis Antetokounmpo back in 2013? Of course, Giannis, a 9-time All-NBA member and 2 MVPs and an NBA championship. What if the Mavericks had actually drafted Giannis back in 2013?
So famously, Donnie Nelson wanted to draft Giannis, and Dallas had the 13th pick in that draft, but they traded down. They traded down again, ended up picking 18th, I believe. And they did that because Mark Cuban, at the time, thought that the new CBA was going to make most of the premier players in the NBA move and go through free agency. And so summer after summer, he hoarded as much cap space as possible. The draft happens before free agency. So even though Dallas did not, was not sure at all, did not have like pre-planned commitments, they wanted to be in the mix. They wanted to ditch a little bit of money. They wanted to make sure that, if they moved 5 slots down, it would affect the amount that they would pay a rookie would affect how much they had to go.
It was
offer.
$1 million to get Dwight Howard.
Yeah.
He was convinced Dwight Howard was going to be a Mav
for the second time in 2 seasons,
yes.
2 summers.
Yes.
So that's why Dallas didn't get Giannis. Let's just say they did. Do you think Giannis becomes Giannis in Dallas?
That's such a tough question because
It really is.
on the one hand, there was probably no bigger believer in him outside of maybe Masai, because also the Raptors apparently really wanted Giannis that same year. But there was maybe no bigger believer in Giannis than Donnie Nelson. Now, we're talking about Mark Cuban wanting stars and Cuban's desire to add a top 10 player to give Dirk one last chance at a title superseded in many ways a lot of their scouting ideas and development. I mean, fans lamented for years how the Mavs didn't develop young guys, even going back to Roddy B, who did not make the list. Spoiler alert.
My list.
So my big question is not so much would Giannis have turned into Giannis if he played in Dallas, because I think a guy with that level of drive, talent, athleticism, I think he was undeniable. He was going to be a star no matter what. My bigger question is that summer, would Mark Cuban have been able to resist trading Giannis for Tyson Chandler the way they did Shane Larkin? Would Rick Carlisle have been patient enough to play Giannis through the growing pains, because his first couple years in the league weren't very pretty. And if Giannis developed quickly the way he did in Milwaukee, would Dallas have eventually traded him for a player better than Tyson Chandler? I don't know that Giannis would still be a Mav or would have been a Mav for 5+ years under the previous regime.
What if I put it this way? If Dallas had drafted Giannis, he would have become a star in Dallas, because that means Donnie Nelson gets what he wants. And if Donnie Nelson's level of influence within the front office was enough that he could have superseded Mark Cuban to draft Giannis, I do believe that level of influence could have carried over and turned Giannis into a star, because the front office believed in him. But the reality was that Mark Cuban was running the show very heavy-handedly in those years, and the idea that Giannis would have ever been on the roster would have only been if Mark Cuban did not have the influence to go flip and trade him.
And for Rick to see it and believe it. Now, to his credit, Rick didn't play a lot of young guys, but he always did play young guys that he believed in. Like, most of the young guys that Rick actually gave minutes to, whether it was in Dallas or somewhere else, went on to have really good careers. So it's not that Rick hates young guys, it's that Rick hates young guys that can't play. Giannis can play, but again, his rookie season, he averaged 6.8 points on 41% shooting from the floor. That dude was just not getting on the floor that season for the Mavs. In following years, maybe, but in following years, he's behind Chandler Parsons, who Mark Cuban wasn't going to let Parsons not get minutes. He would have been behind Jay Crowder, but Jay Crowder ultimately traded for Rondo. There were good players on the team that he was going to be stuck behind on the depth chart, and I'm just not sure he gets minutes, let alone taking minutes from Dirk.
The Mavericks wound up taking Kelly Olynyk with the 13th pick and trading that pick to the Boston Celtics for the number 16 pick and 2 future second-round picks.
Then they traded down again to take Shane Larkin.
Yep. And the Milwaukee Bucks took Giannis Antetokounmpo at number 15. Boys and girls, as they say, the rest is history when it comes to Giannis and the illustrious career that he has had with the Milwaukee Bucks. Let's get to number 9 on the top 10 what-ifs of all time in Mavericks history. This was going to be a little painful.
Already feeling it.
Because this was pretty recent. What if the Mavericks had actually re-signed Jalen Brunson back in 2022? Of course, he has famously went on to play with the New York Knicks, making 2 All-NBA teams, and, of course, being now the star lead guard in Broadway in New York City, Cato. What if the Mavericks had actually re-signed Jalen Brunson and brought him back in 2022?
There's a entire segment we could do on why Jalen Brunson was not re-signed. We could do an entire
show on why.
It is, 3 separate things by 3 separate people that led to it. But what if they had? What if? The what if show. I have always believed in a way that I don't have utmost proof of, partially because it's a what if scenario. I've always believed that I think Jalen Brunson might have got traded for Kyrie if he had been there that next season. And it would have meant that Dallas probably wouldn't have sent out Dorian Finney-Smith, probably could have maybe saved the first rounder. I don't know if it drastically changes how everything plays out. And even looking back, I still get the argument that Kyrie was a slightly better, was a better fitting player next to Luka. Jalen Brunson was going to ascend that season. He was already making his leap, his ascension. He was going to keep getting better. I wasn't worried about Jalen Brunson continuing to rise, but they did. I do think New York unlocked him in a way that Dallas was never fully going to allow him to reach the levels that he has, like all NBA level. I don't think he ever would have been an all NBA player, at least not right away, at least not in the next couple of seasons if he was still playing next to Luka.
Yeah, I think playing next to Luka is the key, because in many ways, Jalen's game is very similar to Luka's.
Very.
For his first couple of years in New York, the only player in the league averaging more dribbles per touch than Luka was Brunson.
Yeah.
The only player getting more time of possession was Brunson. And so those guys are 2 very heliocentric players. The what if they would have traded him anyway kind of echoes back to what we were talking about with Giannis, but I wonder if, considering a year after Brunson left is when Dumont buys the team and Nico assumes more control and then eventually total control of the front office. I wonder if they did keep Jalen around at a lower number, he'd still only be making $30 million or $35 million as opposed to, potentially much more than that. Would they have traded Luka and kept Brunson, built around Brunson? What's a Jalen AD team look like? Would they still have done the trade Luka thing to keep Jalen, or would they have traded Jalen for Kyrie? But I think we might both be in agreement that despite my hope of watching a Jalen Luka backcourt for 15 years, that was probably never going to happen.
It was probably best for both of them, I think, in the end.
The fact that the Mavericks drafted both of those dudes in the same draft, Luka Doncic and Jalen Brunson.
Best draft of all time.
Yeah, like it's an incredible draft that they were able to have, but at the same time, Brunson wound up signing what was a 4-year, $104 million deal with the New York Knicks. Our guy Mark Stein, famously a part of this story, because he was the one that was talking to Mark Cuban at the time at the end of the Golden State Warriors series about the idea of bringing back Jalen Brunson, and Cuban famously said at that point, I'm paraphrasing, we're going to do everything we can to get Jalen Brunson back here as a Dallas Maverick.
He said we can pay him more than anyone else.
Exactly.
Yeah. Why didn't you?
Because they definitely could have done that. But there was some nefarious activity from the New York Knicks. Daddy got to go coach in New York. Son came along with them, Leon. And now, of course, New York has...
Well, they got penalized. They lost a second rounder. Okay.
They got slapped on the proverbial wrist, if you will, by the NBA. But
and that was not... The Mavericks had autonomy in this situation, and they gave it away.
They did. They sure did. Now Jalen Brunson has become a All-NBA and All-Star with the New York Knicks. Before we take our first break here, let's get to number 8 on our top 10 what-if list.
Woo!
What if the Dallas Mavericks had drafted Charles Barkley back in 1984? You say, Cam, we're going way back in the time machine on this one. We are, because back in 1984, the Dallas Mavericks selected at number 4, excuse me, Sam Perkins, ahead of Charles Barkley, who went number 5 to the Philadelphia 76ers. Barkley went on to be an NBA MVP, one of the 75 greatest players of all time, and one of the best to ever do it. Rella, what if the Mavericks had drafted Charles Barkley?
Yeah, things would have been different. Now, a little bit of context. We're talking about two guys with two of the coolest nicknames of their era. Sam Perkins, Big Smooth. Great nickname.
Also, Sleepy Sam.
That's a good nickname,
reference.
too.
Mm-hmm.
And then Charles Barkley, the round mound of rebound. I mean, honestly, that was awesome.
Terrific.
Now, Barkley, early in his career, he was on those loaded Sixers teams, and so there wasn't it's not like he came in the league and was a megastar right away. He ultimately grew into that over time. Whereas Perkins, he was a starting level player for the Mavs all throughout that mid to late 80s period, really the glory days of Mavs basketball before they got Dirk. But he was always kind of that supporting guy. Like, he was always your 4th or 5th best player, and that's good. But Barkley obviously became the best player on many, many teams for many years. Now, Barkley had a very similar game to Mark Aguirre, both undersized. Like, back in those days, they were still kind of considered power forwards, but you were playing big guys. Like Mark Aguirre was a small forward with the power forward's game and a shooting guard's body. Barkley, kind of the same thing. And so there would have been a lot of overlap. I can't see a scenario where the Mavs actually would have drafted Barkley while having Aguirre on the team. Of course, hindsight is 2020. Just a few years later, they traded Mark Aguirre. And so, you kind of wonder, there's a Charles Barkley-sized hole on this team now. What should we do about it? So that one is, there's kind of a slew of those. The year after, the Mavs could have gotten Karl Malone. They drafted Bill Winnington. There's a couple other times where, they missed out on a Hall of Famer, but their team was so loaded that I really understand contextually why they did not take Barkley, why they went with Perkins instead. And Perkins, to his credit, had a fantastic career.
Yeah, the only thing I want to say about this is credit and do justice to Sam Perkins, who was an awesome player for them. When you think about enormous draft misses, you think probably about this draft just a couple spots earlier when Sam Bowie went 1 pick before Michael Jordan. This was not one of those scenarios. Sam Perkins was a player who fit into Dallas. Dallas had success, and he was a very good NBA player, very good center, big man for years. He had a great career. He was not Charles Barkley. And that was clearly, if just by drafting on talent, that would have been the right choice. That would have made more sense in hindsight. But Sam Perkins had a great career. This is not a draft miss as much as a draft what if.
It's just it's a pure what if. It's a pure what if. Now, another what if from that same draft. In the last night of the year, the Mavs controlled the Cleveland Cavaliers pick because of trades they'd made in 1980. And the record between the Cavs and the Bulls came down to the last game of the year. One won, the other lost on the last night of the season. And so the Bulls finished with one more loss than the Cavs. There was no lottery, so the Bulls got the 3rd pick. The Cavs, which became the Mavs pick, got the 4th. If they both would have lost the last night of the year, it would have come down to a coin flip for the number 3 pick. And that's a big what if. The Mavs could have had a chance to draft MJ.
One more what if from that same draft. Dallas also had the 15th pick. They drafted Terrence Stansbury, the player who went next to the Utah Jazz, John Stockton.
Wow.
See, that would have been a tough one because in those days, they already had Derek Harper, who was very young, but had a lot of potential and obviously went on to have a sensational career. And they also had Brad Davis. I'm not sure that John Stockton would have cut it anyway, but that's a pretty big miss too.
It's kind of wild how history kind of repeats itself because you mentioned about coin flips, the Bulls, the Mavs. Coin flips, Bulls, Mavs.
Coin flips, Bulls, Mavs.
Yeah.
Coin flips, Bulls, and Mavs.
Kind of relevant to today when it comes
Hey, Cooper.
That's right. Shout out to Cooper Flag. Let's take our first break here on the DLLS Mavs What If Special. Coming up next, we get into the next 3, including this one when it comes to Tony Braxton. Next on the DLLS Mavs podcast.
Just like your favorite team needs a home court advantage, your home needs a home floor advantage. And Impart Today can help you get it. Impart Today has flooring experts. They have dedicated flooring professionals who focus on flooring every single day of their lives. It's not like the big box stores where, yes, when you finally find the flooring department, you're going to talk to somebody. Who knows what that person was doing yesterday is going to be doing tomorrow. They might be working on garden hoses. They might be doing grass, sod. They might be installing, helping somebody the next day with Bermuda grass. That's like the opposite of floors. That is completely different than floors. Can you trust a person like that? You always can trust Empire Today because they live and breathe flooring. They're going to be with you every step of the way. It's a whole different ballgame. So schedule a free in-home estimate today because some things are just better at home. DLS listeners can receive a $350 discount when using promo code DLLS. Yes, you heard that right. A $350 discount with code DLLS. Restrictions apply. Visit EmpireToday/DLLS for full details.
Let me talk to you about moments. Moments that represent big points in your life. You know that moment where you forget your favorite pair of sunglasses or you leave them on the beach? Shady Rays can take care of that with you when it comes to the best sunglasses out there. You know that moment when you realize you left your favorite pair of sunglasses at the beach? You can get a free replacement when it comes to Shady Rays. With Shady Rays, they are able to take care of you. Now I actually wear my sunglasses without fear on hikes, at concerts, on the boat, wherever, because I know if I break them or lose them, I can get my replacements with Shady Rays. Shady Rays eyewear that has your back as well. If you lose or break them, even on day one, Shady Rays will send you a brand new pair. No guilt trip, just replacements. We've teamed up with Shady Rays to bring you an exclusive offer. Head to shadyrays.com and use code DLLS35 for 35% off polarized sunglasses. Try for yourself the shades rated 5 stars by over 300,000 people with Shady Rays. Dang. It is our top 10 what if special on the DLLS Mavs podcast as we go through the top 10 what ifs in Mavericks history. We've already gone through 10 through 8. Now we get to number 7 when it comes to the Dallas Mavericks. Now, this one is a little interesting. What if the 3 J's, I'm talking about Jason Kidd, Jamal Mashburn, and Jimmy Jackson, had actually worked out? All 3, of course, are top 5 picks from 1993 to 1995. But a little pop culture reference, if you know about this, allegedly broke up the 3 J's, Bobby? What's going on here?
No, that's an urban legend.
One that she accentuated.
Yes, Tony
really
Braxton leaned in. Tony Braxton leaned in.
Never kiss and tell.
That's right.
Was the quote.
I don't think there's ever really been anything like that. Well, there was something involving the Cavs. I don't want to even talk about that one. Don't want to talk about that. But I mean, just a pop culture phenomenon. But it's a really compelling what if for the Mavs because they never moved up in the lottery. One of those years was the Penny Hardaway draft. Another one of those years, Shaq got drafted. Another one of those years, J-Kidd went, I think, number 2 overall or number 3 overall, whatever. Shared co-rookie of the year with Grant Hill, who was the number 1 pick in the draft. And J-Kidd arguably had a better career than Grant Hill. So, they got a little unlucky because they were completely terrible. They won 11 games one of those years, 13 games one of those years. Out of that horrible run comes 3 really intriguing young players that play different positions, 1 through 3, that are all really exciting, really flashy, really cool. The 94-95 Mavs team and 95-96, the 2 full seasons that all 3 of those guys played together, they were top 5 in pace. They were just in 95, 96, the NBA shortened the 3-point line. So they were just letting it fly from all over the floor. I mean, they were still losing a lot of games, but you could see the vision, right? Like you could see the idea, this young, up and coming, fun group of players that are going to play offense and play fast. They're athletes. They're awesome. They're cool. And then some things happened. And during the 96-97 season, between the day after Christmas and the trade deadline in February, they traded all three of them to separate teams. They traded J. Kidd to Phoenix or Michael Finley, which ended up working out really well. They traded Jamal Mashburn to Miami, and they traded Jim Jackson to Jersey. And Jim Jackson, they got Sean Bradley back. Jamal Mashburn, they didn't really get anything back of substance that directly helped them. Now, getting Michael Finley back for Kidd was great. They eventually got Dirk and Nash a couple years later, built their own big three, and that ushered in the Nelly era and all that stuff. But for the Mavs to have been such a laughingstock for the entirety of the 90s, and then to emerge with these three guys to show for it, it's like the future's so bright, and then it just fell apart almost as quickly as it came together.
They were never as good as the Thunder Big Three, but think about the Thunder. Think about Oklahoma City. Think about if Kevin Durant, Russell Westbrook, and James Harden had all got traded within years of being drafted, right? Now, the Thunder had success quicker. Their players were better, I think, when you look back in the end.
And their supporting cast was better. I mean, the Mavs, again, was better. Add 3 rookies to an 11-win team, and it's going to get pretty nasty.
And I think...
No disrespect to Tim Legler.
I think that is the what if. The what if is that there's a lot of personality clashes. There's issues. There's reasons why Dallas ended up breaking it up. But if the team had just been better, if the team just had more around them, more role players, more consistency, more established franchise identity, and Dallas was just lacking all of that throughout the 90s. There's a franchise that came around in 1980, had a brilliantly fast start, but they were the losingest team for an entire decade. Like one of the worst losing stretches any professional team in any North American major league has gone through. And I think if you look back, you can see that culturally and professionally, they were not set up for success. And if those things were set up a little bit better, you can't say for sure that they stick together. You can't say for sure, what the ceiling would be. But you can look at them and say, this was a situation that even if it was infighting, even if it was personality clashes, even if it was this or that or whatever, that ultimately caused that to get broken up. It's not that surprising given how little they were given to work with.
And also, I mean, Jamal and Jamal in particular, but also Jim Jackson, they struggle with injuries throughout their career too. And so their individual careers are big what ifs. Jamal Mashburn, all-star caliber player. He was an incredible player. Jim Jackson had a really long career, but missed a lot of time during his prime. J. Kidd obviously went on to be the Hall of Fame, top 75 player and everything, but you rarely get a trio like that, let alone 3 drafts in a row, and for it to just completely bomb was really sad.
Thanks a lot, Tony Braxton. Let's move on to our top 10 list as we continue here on our What If special when it comes to the top 10 what ifs of all time. We get to number 6, Roy Tarpley. What if he didn't suffer from off-court issues? Of course, won the Sixth Man of the Year back in 1988 at the age of 23, averaged over 17 points per game, and 13 rebounds over the next 3 seasons, but in just 69 games. And, of course, unfortunately, banned from the league multiple times due to off-court.
Yeah, he suffered from, various types of addiction, struggle with alcohol and drug issues. And, he came to the league in the mid-'80s at a time whenever, Len Bias overdosed the night he was drafted. This was the mid to late 80s was a very scary time. And, the league was just kind of out of control. There was really no safeguards in place for players. And a lot of guys dealt with addiction and especially drug issues during those years. And, Tarpley's, that situation really in part led to why the 3Js was such a failure, because the Mavs had staked a lot of their hopes for the late 80s into the early 90s on Tarpley. By then, Rowe was getting a little older. Aguirre had been traded, in the 88-89 season. And so, you're kind of trying to hand the baton off, right, to the next generation. Brad Davis done. Derek Harper, kind of, prime, tail end of his prime. Everyone came to the league at 22 back then. And so by the end of the 80s, these guys are all approaching 30. And Tarpley was 24, 25, and a star, dude. He was so freaking talented. Footage
like
of him playing is unbelievable.
Like a crazy fluid athlete.
He's like Giannis.
6'10". I was gonna say. I was gonna ask. It's like Giannis, a crazy comparison.
Yeah, now it's a different era. Yeah, totally different era, style of play and everything. But he was unbelievable at both ends of the floor. But yeah, he got banned for alcohol and drug issues multiple times, and then got banned for life. And he missed like 2 full seasons and then came back in 94, 95 to play on the 3J's team and played like 5 or 6 games or 12 games or something and got banned again, and that was it. And just a huge, a huge disappointment. Very sad situation. Obviously, addiction is a disease, and Tarpley suffered from multiple kinds, and he died early due to what is believed to be, stemming from those issues earlier in his life. And so it's just really sad. It sucks. It's terrible, but it had a huge negative consequence on this franchise.
One quote from Derek Harper, his teammate, obviously early on, that is coming from a Mavs book I wrote like almost a decade ago. But Derek Harper said, Roy, he was his worst enemy in a lot of ways, but in spite of him having the addiction and the problems that he had, I don't think anybody has ever said he was a bad person. He was a great person. We just don't know how good he would have been, unfortunately.
Yeah. Real quick, to correct myself, sorry. During the 94-95 season, he played 55 games. He played 5 games in 1990-91, and that was really whenever it became clear that like this Mavs team is just going to fall apart. And not long after that, they traded Rowe, they traded Harp, and things got really bad. And so, unfortunately, it just did not go right for him or for the Mavs.
Let's continue here on our top 10 what ifs in Dallas Mavericks history, and we get into number 5. What if the Mavericks didn't win Game 2 of the 2011 NBA Finals? Of course, the Mavericks were down by 15 with just over 7 minutes left in that game, already down 1-0. But Dirk Nowitzki leads a massive comeback to tie that series at 1 game apiece, changing the entire trajectory.
Biggest shot in Mavs history
of that series. What if the Mavericks did not win Game 2? The 2011 NBA Finals.
Why would you even ask that question?
Because it's a what if show. It literally is a what if show.
I don't know. What's your answer?
Man, I think the Mavs lose that series.
Yeah.
And that Dwayne Wade 3, like that still lives in my memory because he did not miss that by much. If he would have made that heave at the end, I mean I think
the half court 40-footer
that would have been a tough
time
one
as
for
the
me.
buzzer expired.
That would have been a tough one.
It looks like it would have banked in if it was 6 inches to the left.
Yeah, I mean, it lives in my nightmares still. But yeah, I think the Mavs go on to lose that series, most likely. And I think there's a non-zero chance that Dirk leaves. Now, the one possible silver lining of that is maybe coming out of the lockout, the Mavs don't blow up the team. Maybe they keep it together, try adding to it. Caron Butler comes back, let's give it one more go. So maybe they still get one anyway. But if after 2011-12 they didn't win the title, I think Dirk gets a wandering eye, and maybe there's no 41-21-1, and that would have just been devastating to me.
I think it would have been a few seasons, and I think he would have ended up with the Warriors as they rose.
Which would have been beautiful.
Wow.
It would have been.
It would have fit that team really well in a lot of ways, especially the late
Steph, Clay, Draymond, Iguodala, and Dirk.
Yeah.
Holy moly!
I genuinely believe that could have happened in an extreme hypothetical what if. And I think it would have taken a few years, and I think as that team, the Warriors were rising, at some point, Dirk would have realized, like, I fit there.
Yeah.
I make sense there. And that would have been beautiful in its own way.
Or the Rockets go play with Harden and Dwight. I mean, they made a pitch for him as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
I
think it worked out better for the city of Dallas.
For sure.
I think it worked out a lot better this way.
The fact that the Dallas Mavericks defense gave up a total of 5 points in the final 7 minutes and 13 seconds of that game. You talked about the three-pointer that Dwayne Wade missed. It was a three-pointer that he made with 7:13 left that gave him that 15-point lead.
Worst moment of my life.
At that point, you felt like the game was. Did you feel like the game was over?
It was over. Yeah.
And the Mavericks stormed.
15 points in that era of NBA basketball was insurmountable.
In the fourth quarter,
it was insurmountable.
Yeah.
But even at any point of the game, 15 points was a comeback. It was not a comeback that you made very often.
The Mavericks, of course, outscored the Heat 24-18 in that final period, going what was eventually A 22-5 run to close out the final 7 minutes and 13 seconds of that game. Dirk Nowitzki's layup with 3.6 seconds left delivered a Game 2 win. And of course, the Mavericks famously went on to win their first championship in franchise history. That means, boys and girls, we are now into the top 5 moments of all time. What if, when it comes to the Dallas Mavericks history, we will get into the rest of those coming up next on the DLLS Mavs What If Special.
First, you got to get your money right. It's summer. We're trying to go on trips. We're trying to have fun. We're trying to go out to eat, hang at the pool, do all of these things that require money. And if you want to get control of your finances, you have got to turn to help from our friends at Monarch Money. They turn your platform into your own personal financial command center where you can see how much you're saving. You can set goals for yourself. Hey, let's say you want to go on a trip. How much is it going to cost? How can I save my money to help me do that? For me, I invest a little bit. I don't invest a lot of it, but I invest enough to where I like to see how those things are doing. Monarch tracks all of that. I got money in a 401k. I got money in a couple different accounts. All of that is right there conveniently for me so that I can see how everything is doing. I can, and again, use that money to set goals for myself to help budget. I'm about to have to update my whole wardrobe. That ain't going to be cheap either. So I'm going to turn to Monarch Money for help as well. Get control of your overall finances with Monarch Money. Use code DLLS at Monarch Money in your monarchmoney.com for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with code DLLS. You also got to smell right too, okay? You stink. I smell you through the screen right now. Or maybe I'm smelling my own grundle. I don't know, but it's not just your pits that sweat. It's not just your pits that stink. You got BO all over the place from head to toe. And our friends at Mando are not only going to get you smelling right, but they're also going to keep that odor under control for many hours and that sweat under control too. I'm a big pit sweat guy. My armpits sweat all the time, and it can be embarrassing. But Mando gets me right as well, and it's going to keep you smelling good for 12 hours after a shower. Mando's starter pack is perfect for new customers. It comes with solid stick deodorant, cream tube deodorant, 2 free products of your choice, and free shipping. As a special offer for listeners, new customers get 20% off site-wide with our exclusive code DLLS at shopmando.com. Shopmando.com, code DLLS for 20% off site-wide and free shipping. Please support our show and tell them we sent you. Smell fresher, stay drier, and boost your confidence from head to toe with Mando.
We are into the top 4 when it comes to our What If special here for the DLLS Mavs podcast. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe to DLLS Sports and do the same for our DLLS Mavs podcast wherever you get your podcast for free. We're going to spend a little more time on numbers 4 through 1. We start with number 4 and we go all the way back to 2003. This was personal for Bobby. Bobby doesn't like this one. What if Dirk Nowitzki didn't get hurt in the 2003 Western Conference Finals? Of course, Dirk exited what was the series after Game 3 with the Mavs being down 2-1. Bobby?
Well, I want to start by saying this is framed the right way. It's not what if Dirk had come back and played into the 2003 finals, which, I think the rift still would have been there. Nelly would have disagreed with Cuban. Maybe it would have been more tilted the other direction, but that didn't matter. There was a chance that Dirk Nowitzki did come back and he did play and he did hurt his knee again. And that's just not fun. That's not
what happened
necessary.
With Tyrese and Dame.
Exactly. It's a completely unnecessary what if. Obviously, it is best that Dirk did not come back and play, that he did not sustain a further injury and suffer from it. The what if that's interesting is, what if he doesn't get hurt? How far Dallas can go? And what would happen with Nelly? What would happen with that team that was built? Because a lot of it broke up and changed and molded, and they had a new coach. And a lot of that was predicated off this injury. So the question to me isn't, like whether they handled the situation right, because I 100% believe they did. I'm not a doctor. I wasn't in the room, but I think Dirk at this point of his career believes that that situation was handled the right way. The question is, what if he just didn't?
Yeah. And this happened, to make matters worse, that happened like right at the end of the game too. There's a few minutes left in the fourth quarter or something whenever this happened, and so.
He played 40 minutes and like.
What if the time just ran out?
It was reasonable. It wasn't bad. It wasn't a bad coaching decision per se, but it was also reasonable to think he would have been off the court at that time.
Maybe because they were down. Like the game was already pretty much over.
Right.
But again, this is the playoffs. Like it's the
conference
playoffs.
finals.
You're playing a lot. You're on the court for 42, 43 minutes a game, especially in those days. And so he almost didn't get hurt at all, but. he leaves. The Mavs are down 2-1. They lose game 4 at home as well. So they were able to win one of the first 2 games in San Antonio. I believe game 1 of that series they won. They were 49-51 on free throws in that game. It was incredible. They drop game 2. They come back, lose game 3. They lose game 4. They go to San Antonio and win game 5. They come home for game 6, and they're up double digits in the fourth quarter. And then Steve effing Kerr goes off and makes a bunch of threes. The Spurs outscored the Mavs, I think, like 34-9. Yeah, the future Suns GM outscored the Mavs like 30-9 or 35-9 or something in the fourth quarter to come back and win that game. And the season was over. And like Tim alluded to, it created kind of an irreparable rift between Don Nelson and Mark Cuban. And that almost played out like in the ensuing offseason because the Mavs, they still held on to Dirk, Nash, and Finley, that big 3. But they went out and traded their depth for Antoine Jameson, who won 6th Man of the Year with the Mavs the following season, and Antoine Walker, who just did not fit really at all. He took a bunch of threes and shot like 28% on threes, but even still, that 03-04 Mavs team, by relative offensive rating, I believe is still your number 1 or maybe number 2 best offense of all time compared to the rest of the league. And so it was a very good offense, but they were a very bad defense, unlike that 02-03 team, which actually was almost top 10, if not top 10. And it was kind of Cuban's like desire to get as many stars in there as possible. That team flames out, losing the first round. Then the following year, Nelly quits right at the end of the year, and Avery comes in. So, there was a huge controversy between Nelly and Cuban because Don Nelson did not want Dirk to come back, and Cuban wanted Dirk to come back. And had Dirk not gotten hurt, maybe the situation is certainly less tenuous. Maybe there is still some sort of divide at some point. Maybe it's the following summer whenever. I'm going to spoil one of our future what ifs, but whenever Nash left, maybe that would have caused it. But at any rate,
Nelly and Mark seem like people who eventually were going to get in a rift.
I think so. I think it was destined to happen. But I mean, it's no guarantee the Mavs win that series if Dirk doesn't get hurt. But they might have.
Do you think they beat New Jersey
easily? Yeah, the Spurs went on to sweep the Nets in the finals. The Mavs would have gone on to win the title that year.
That was actually the 4-2 finals.
Was it really?
Yeah.
Oh, so they sweep the previous year?
Yeah.
Okay. The Lakers did?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But 2003?
Yeah, 02-03, yeah. I mean, that Mavs team won 60 games. I think they win the finals. I mean, who knows? But yeah.
It was a classic 2-2, and then the Spurs won the next 2.
Gotcha, okay. Now Kidd guarding Nash that series would have been pretty tough for Nash. It was a different era. You get a little more physicality, but they had no answer for Dirk. I mean, there's no answer for Dirk.
Not to bring you down any further, but that game 6 where Dallas had the double-digit lead in the fourth quarter and Steve Kerr hit the shots, Dallas ended up being outscored in the fourth quarter for their season to end without Dirk Nowitzki available. They got outscored 34-9.
Jeez.
Yeah. Previously, the previous quarters from San Antonio were 22, 18, and 16.
Yeah, Kerr hit 3 threes, and Steven Jackson hit a couple too. Yeah. Because this is where my hatred of doubling in the post comes from.
Oh, this is the origin.
The Mavs were doubling Duncan from one pass away the entire quarter, and it was just open 3, open 3, open 3, open 3. The Spurs hit like 15 threes in the second half or something unholy. Like, it was unbelievable, and the Mavs just had no answer.
Leaving Steve Kerr wide open is just not a good idea.
From one pass away, they didn't have to earn it. It was literally like the highlights from that game it's torture for me. If you ever want to get a confession out of me, pin me down and make me watch that crap.
Oh, wow. That's for that one.
Please don't.
Let's get to number 3 on our top 10 what ifs. Let's go back to 2006. What if the Mavs had actually won Game 3 of the 2006 NBA Finals? Of course, Dallas led 2 games and was up double digits in the fourth quarter. And unfortunately, we knew what happened from there. The Miami Heat go on to win 4 straight, winning that series 4-2. Dwayne Wade winning his first NBA championship. The Dallas Mavericks painfully losing that series 6 games. What if the Mavericks actually won?
It's a sweep.
Yeah.
It's a sweep. The Heat were ready to fold, man.
They were ready to go. They were ready to go.
They were done.
They were ready to go.
They were cooked. I mean, that Heat team was very old too. I mean, it was Jason Williams and Gary Payton,
Alonzo Mourning,
and Shaq and Alonzo Mourning,
Yep.
and a lot of guys. I think Antoine Walker was on that Heat team too, and hit the Mavs with the shimmy in the finals, which absolutely ruined my life at the time. But it was a bunch of vets. It was very
they
similar.
were hanging on. There was a lot of them hanging on, trying to win a title.
It was similar to the 10-11 team in that it was a bunch of vets trying to get a ring. So maybe they would have been able to muster up the guts to win Game 4. And in those days, it was a 2-3-2. So games 3 through 5 were in Miami. So maybe they even push it to Game 6. But the Mavs easily win that series. In my opinion, it's a sweep, but they're not blowing a 3-0 lead. It's not happening.
I think if it was a 2-2-1-1-1 format rather than the 2-3-2, even if Dallas went home 2-2, I think they still win those finals.
I agree.
If they just had Game 5 at home, they needed to get out of Miami. Lots of stories, about Avery Johnson
hotels in the middle of the series.
like sent them to the swamp, basically. Threw them in some, tents and, had them canoe to the arena. And, there's just they had to get out of Miami. And the fact that they had to play that third game there in a row, the decisive Game 5, tied 2-2, whoever wins it wins the series 80% of the time.
There was a phantom foul in that game. Dirk missed a free throw that's a house of horrors. That gym was a house of horrors for that team.
There seems like there's a lot of alternative universes when it comes to if the Mavericks had actually won that series. Does Avery Johnson remain head coach of that team?
He'd still be coach today.
I'd say how much longer does he remain head coach? Also, if the Mavericks go on to win that finals, does that begin a dynastic 3-4 year period? Because we know what happened the following year. They win, I believe, 67 games that year. Dirk Nowitzki wins the NBA MVP. I'm not gonna talk about what happened in the playoffs because we know what happened.
There were no playoffs. There was a work stoppage.
So what if a big reason Dallas won 67 the next regular season was it was a revenge season. They were coming back to win the title.
They were coming back for it all.
If they didn't quite have that motivation, if they had championship hangover instead, don't you think they'd win a few fewer games and don't get matched up against the Golden State Warriors, the only team they couldn't beat that season?
Possibly.
The only one. It doesn't take much for Dallas to not happen to run into the one team that next season, the one team.
And
they
do you want to know why
against.
they ran into why the Warriors were such a problem? Because they were coached by the guy
Donnie Nelson
that didn't want Dirk to go back in the game.
Yeah,
that's the thing that makes being a Mavs fan in that time so torturous. In the finals, you're losing to a guy that was just on your team, right? And then to another guy that your owner kept trying to trade for over the years. The following year, you lose in the first round to the guy that was your previous coach, the only one that knew the secrets how to stop your best player. And the only reason he was the coach of them is because the owner ran him out of town. Because the owner didn't pay the point guard. Just like 15 years later, he didn't pay the other point guard. I feel like I'm losing my mind. You're constantly losing to the thing that you had.
Yeah.
You're paying the price for your previous mistakes. Just year after year after year. 05, they get eliminated by Steve Nash. 04, they get eliminated by the Kings, who they just beat the year before. It's just gotta
overcome it. You gotta overcome it.
There are some other kind of circumstances though. For example, if they win in 06, they probably don't trade Devin Harris for Jason Kidd. They probably just hold on to Devin. And then a few years later, do they trade Josh Howard for Brendan Haywood, which eventually kind of opened the way for Tyson to come here too. Would the Mavs have ever gotten Sean Marion? Would the Mavs have had Rick Carlisle? Would the Mavs have I don't know where it ends. Would Dirk winning one earlier in his career, would he have retired earlier? Would he have left to go win more?
Would he have gotten another one?
Yeah. Would the Mavs have won in 07 too? And then Kobe's like, you know what? I actually do want to leave. And that wouldn't have been a rumor. Maybe that would have been a reality. It could have gone so many different ways.
It really could have. I think you're more well-versed about this than I am. I was a smaller child.
I was an angsty teen.
Yeah. I still get the sense that Avery Johnson was going to get fired at some point.
It's possible.
Or not.
He would have got a little bit longer leash.
He might have got a slightly longer leash, and that would have had a lot of trickle-down effects.
I mean, there's definitely no Rick, though, because Rick was only that offseason. So it could be you're replacing him with a retread. It could be you're replacing him with Eric Spoelstra. Probably not, but it could be.
The fact that Pat Riley came off out of the executive office, told Stan Van Gundy, hey, just step aside, and wind up leading the Heat to one of the insane things about that entire 2006 season. unfortunately led to the Mavericks losing the championship that year. But 5 years later.
5 years later,
5 years later.
they did one suit to Miami. So like
They did.
2011 was the culmination of all of these bad memories, just
The
all
5-year
resolving,
period of just
all
Yes.
resolving in such a beautiful way.
Yeah.
And like Eric Dampier was on that team. The Mavs win Game 6 in that gym. They do the one suit thing to Pat Riley. Like it's just beautiful.
Let's get to the top 2 what-if moments, and we get into some real controversy when it comes to numbers 2 and 1, and unfortunately, some very painful ones when it comes to the biggest what-ifs in Mavericks history. We'll do all that and more coming up next year on the DLLS Mavs podcast, What Ifs. But I want you to become a diehard member here at DLLS Sports and join our DLLS Sports family. We've got our member-only Discord, 20% off events. We've also got incredible writing from our guy Tim Cato covering the Dallas Mavericks, Clarence Hill Jr. covering your Dallas Cowboys, Sam Nessler and Sean Shapiro covering the Dallas Stars, and of course Jeff Wilson covering the Texas Rangers. All DLLS.com. Become a diehard member today, and we've got incredible merch, fresh merch as well when it comes to our new Dallas collection.
Good looking merch.
Brand new t-shirts that you can find at store.allcitynetwork.com. The entire Dallas collection, including a beautiful Mavs shirt that we have, the DLLS Mavs shirt representing the Dallas Mavericks and all of your favorite DFW sports teams. Again, store.allcitynetwork.com for our exclusive Dallas collection of t-shirts that we have. Also, when you become a diehard member here at DLLS Sports, you get 20% off our events, including we've got a tremendous event coming up November 15th through the 18th, our DLLS road trip featuring our DLLS Cowboys show. You can hang out with the guys in Sin City for our DLLS road trip that will culminate with a Monday Night Football game between your Cowboys and the Las Vegas Raiders at Allegiant Stadium on November the 18th. You can hang out with Clarence Hill Jr. in Sin City.
Vegas is fun. We can confirm.
We can confirm that Vegas is really dope.
No, we can't.
We
Oh,
literally
that's right.
can't.
No, we literally can't.
We cannot talk about why it's dope, but we can confirm that it is.
It is.
Whether it was dope stays in a
You'll have
place
to go-
that
you'll
may
have
or
to
may
go
or
to
not,
find out.
may or may not have been
They
dope.
literally saw us there.
That's true. They did. We
literally
were
s-
on camera.
We were literally on camera.
Yeah.
I don't
Did
know
you
what
know
you're
that
talking about.
Those shows were live.
Those were live. You remember that? That's right, because what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
AllDLLS.com. Click that QR code to become a diehard member today and visit AllDLLS.com to become part of our DLLS family. Let's finish up here on our DLLS Mavs What If special. We have gone through numbers 10 through 3. We now get to the top 2 or bottom 2, depending on how you feel about it. What ifs of all time. And we start. Oh my gosh.
I hate that picture so much.
Oh boy. We get to, I think, the biggest what if of all time for the Mavericks.
I mean, I will defend it at number 2 and number 2.
Reveal it for the
because
podcast audience.
It is.
Just-
What if the Dallas Mavericks did not trade, I can't believe I'm saying these words, did not trade Luka Doncic in the 2024-25 season. Of course, the Mavericks had just went to the NBA Finals, having lost, of course, to the Celtics, but they were trying to get themselves back there. And, of course, December 25th on Christmas Day, Luka Doncic strains his calf, was never to be seen again in a Mavericks uniform. And on the wee hours of February 2nd, Sunday morning, or February 1st, Saturday night, depending on where you were, the Dallas Mavericks did what was at the time the unthinkable, trading Luka Doncic to the Los Angeles Lakers in exchange for Anthony Davis, Max Christie, and a 2029 first-round pick from the Los Angeles Lakers, and what became the biggest story, not sports story, the biggest story in the world for probably a 2-week period because of how shocking the trade was, because, Tim Cato, no one saw this trade coming.
It's going to be the biggest what if. It's just not yet because we haven't seen all of the fallout. We don't have all the evidence. We haven't seen what transpires over the next few years. Cooper Flagg, I mean, we're not going to elect him to the Hall of Fame tomorrow. Wemby isn't getting elected to the Hall of Fame. They might both be there. But let's hold off. So the real what if, the one what if that we can dive into is, would Dallas have won the finals last, like, a month ago? Is that even worth throwing out there? Do we have thoughts on whether Dallas, if they had just stayed together, and also if injuries had worked out? I have concerns that Derek Lively was always going to come back in a way that he wouldn't have been as effective a year before. And that really clouds this whole thing. Because if Derek Lively isn't fully healthy, he's the reason they got to the finals 2 years ago. But
you still have Luka, and you still the butterfly effect, whatever. This is just so speculative, but Kyrie probably doesn't tear his knee, which not only positively affects them last season, but also positively affects them this upcoming season.
That's right.
Which he might miss. He won't miss all of it, hopefully, but he might. He's going to miss a lot of it, and that affects this season too and his career.
Assuming health, let's just say they stay healthy throughout the course of the rest of the season. After Luka comes back, we assume he comes back around that February 8th mark when Anthony Davis made his debut. I could see the Mavericks having met the Oklahoma City Thunder in the Western Conference Finals, and we would have gotten epic Western Conference Finals because the Mavericks clearly have the number of the OKC Thunder. So seeing a healthy Luka and Kyrie and that team versus this version of SGA, Chet Holmgren, Jalen Williams, and the Oklahoma City Thunder, I think we would have gotten a barn burner of a 7-game series. I don't know if the Mavericks win that series because of the changes that the Thunder made, but hell, I would have loved to have seen the chance to see Luka Doncic, Kyrie against Caruso, Williams, and SGA in that version after what they had just did in eliminating them the previous postseason.
I'm not convinced they won it either. That OKC team was much, much better than they were the year before when Dallas beat them, but
And I forgot about Hartenstein, who was added as well.
Yeah, but you look at the regular season, and Dallas had success, with Luka, without Luka, with Kyrie. I believe they beat them without either at one point.
Mm-hmm.
And
PJ Oklahoma. That's right.
What's funny is I look at last year's roster for the Luka trade. I like that team beating Boston in a rematch, even if a year later in Boston, Boston wasn't back in the finals. They didn't even make it out of the second round, but I like them against Boston. And
hell, they made the additions in free agency to try to go beat a team like Boston. And added Clay and everybody else.
I don't view Oklahoma City and their championship last month, as a unstoppable juggernaut, which is scary because I think they're still getting better and they're young and all this stuff. But I never viewed them as an unstoppable juggernaut. I think the West, if Dallas stayed healthy, would have come down to those two. I don't know if they would have beaten the Pacers.
Yeah,
here's
a hot take.
Maybe,
the Mavs
maybe
wouldn't
not.
beat the Pacers either the last 2 years.
Right.
If they met them in the finals. This is a nightmare matchup for Dallas and for Luka and Kyrie in particular. But I mean, here's a slightly negative, I guess. What if the Mavs hadn't traded Luka and then lost in the first round to Denver or lost to the Clippers? Then what happens? Kyrie's approaching free agency for a team that just got bounced. Does Luka get traded anyway? Does J. Kidd, instead of interviewing for the Knicks job, does he take the Knicks job? Is Nico still around? Because that would be a complete failure. There's no excuses to why the team failed, whereas this past season there was a ton of them.
Yeah.
So, had they kept the team together and then failed, what would have happened then? Would they have run it back? Would they have added? Would they have broken down? Would they have changed everything? Those are the kind of things that we don't know either, which makes this such a juicy what if, because I don't think it's a binary of they either trade Luka and have the season they did, or they don't trade Luka and win the title. There's a lot of stuff in between where it could be, and most of those things are very, very, very bad. We experienced probably the worst version of it. Granted, they did get Cooper at the end, thanks to luck, but yeah, I mean, it's going to be a huge what if, and it's only going to get bigger over the years.
Yeah, unfortunately, we got a potential glimpse of how the future could look when Luka Doncic, of course, came back to Dallas on April 9th and dropped 45 points on the Dallas Mavericks in what was a virtual home game for the Lakers that night, of course, with Luka Doncic making his return.
You think if the Mavs win, let's say the Mavs win 2 of the next 3 titles, 25 years from now, the next generation of DLLS Mavs podcast hosts do that as a positive what if? What if the Mavs wouldn't have traded Luka? Ugh.
That's a great
like that.
Yeah, that's a great question.
The winners write history, as they say. So
there's a lot of Mavericks fans who I think feel like they would have rather have lost titles or potential finals with Luka Doncic rather than winning titles without
One
him.
thing to say that
No, I agree. It's one thing to say, but we may experience that or may not experience that. But I think that just speaks to the idea of how much Luka Doncic meant to this franchise in the 6.5 years that he was here. That gets us to the number one what if in Dallas Mavericks history. What if the Mavericks had actually re-signed Steve Nash in 2004? Now, Mark Cuban, of course, talks about this all the time, about this being the biggest regret of his Mavericks ownership tenure. Of course, Nash went on to win back-to-back MVPs in 2005 and 2006. The Mavericks, though, of course, went on to the finals in 2006 and won 67 games in 2007, but they famously did not win their first championship in franchise history until 2011. What if the Mavericks had actually re-signed Steve Nash?
That is such a enormous what if. Now, Nash was probably not the player that Luka will end up being, but Steve Nash won the MVP each of the first 2 years right after leaving Dallas.
As soon as he left, he was MVP.
And the Suns won 55-plus games like 10 years in a row or some, like, so whatever, whenever he was there, and they were the best offense and everything.
They're incredible.
Now, Nash, his final 4 years in Dallas, ages 26 to 29 season, 16.5 points, 8 assists, 3 boards of steel, 42% from 3. Super efficient player. The Mavs offense was number 1 in the league like that whole time. That summer of 2004, the NBA, and Mark Stein will get in this. We're going to publish a VOD where he talks at length about this here in the coming days. But during that summer, the NBA changed the rules of defense. They eliminated the hand check rule, which made Nash even better. So, like, I don't know at the time if the Mavs knew that rule change was coming or not, but if they did, that was a horrible miscalculation. And then another justification that was used by the Mavs, and particularly Mark Cuban, to not bring Nash back is worries about his health, worries that his body was going to break down, which it did whenever he was 39. But at the time, Nash in 01-02 played 82 games, in 02-03 played 82 games, and in 03-04 played 78 games. So I do get the worries because he missed 4 games in one season during that time.
Why was he taking vacations? I don't get it.
If you're going to do it, don't do it with us. I'm unwavering. It was a massive, massive, massive failure, and I cannot believe that he allowed it to repeat itself 20 years later with Jalen. But Jalen is not the player that Steve Nash was. This was even worse.
Yeah.
Steve
Nash had already established himself as one of the better players in the league at that point.
2-time All-NBA with the Mavs.
Yeah.
I wish Mike D'Antoni could have somehow come to Dallas and coached Nash and Dirk Nowitzki.
Oh, they already had one of the best offensive coaches of all time coaching
No, I
those
know.
two guys.
And
true.
part of the reason I bring that up, reason I bring it up as a what if is, I think if Nelly stayed and brought the way that Dirk and Steve are so interesting as a what if to me, how innovative ahead of the curve they were. And I wonder if not literally Steph and the Warriors, because Steph is a one-of-one player of all time, but I wonder how much 7 seconds or less with the Phoenix Suns could have happened in Dallas, because it was happening in Dallas. Dallas was innovative. Nelly did have this team shooting threes. He did have Dirk Nowitzki playing, both small forward and the 5. Just like, let's try everything. You're not a forward. Don't post up. That was under Nelly is when he was taking the most threes, for a 7-footer, really that the NBA had ever seen. And what I wonder is less about the titles, which is just, it's unknowable. It's completely unknowable. Unless Mark Stein has something to report. And in the other video you can watch, of him kind of going back to those days and thinking it through. But I just wonder if you had kept them together, whether there would be a different name, a different title, a different slogan for the Mavericks that spoke to their innovativeness and the way that they changed basketball. Because I think we all understand Dirk Nowitzki changed basketball, but I think Dirk and Steve Nash together on a team for more years with a coach that supported them, that pushed the boundaries, I think that would have been, those would have been teams that would have been famous for changing basketball.
I mean, Nelly Ball was an innovative thing at the time. And I mean, those Mavs teams, like, they ran some pick and roll, not to the same degree that the D'Antoni Suns did. But again, that was in large part thanks to the rule changes.
Right.
Those Mavs teams were known for hunting mismatches and then just overwhelming the opponent with skill and with spacing. 02-03, the Mavs took 23s a game, which is not very much, but that was second most in the league that year.
Yeah.
So I mean, they were going bombs away, and they were the top team. They were the top team in the league from the free throw line. They were number 3 in 3-point percentage that season. They were also number 1 in offensive rating, number 9 in defensive rating, number 7 in pace, number 2 in 3-point rating, number 3 in effective field goal percentage, number 1 in turnover percentage. They were unbelievable offensively, but maybe I'm trying too hard to tie this back to the Dirk and the conference finals thing from just the season earlier. But if that hadn't happened, would Mark have paid Nash? Like, was the divide? Was Nash the outcome of Nelly and Mark clashing?
We may never know.
We may never know.
Which is why it's the greatest what if Dallas Mavericks history.
I mean, Kevin, were you Mavs conscious at the time? Because you weren't living in Texas at the time, right? Or
I was not. So
were you aware of the Mavs in those days?
Of course. Oh no, of course. Like Dirk Nowitzki alone. Like watching him, Steve Nash, obviously seeing Nash go on to the Phoenix Suns and win those back-to-back MVPs. Mavs and the Spurs rivalry obviously was starting to reach its fever pitch in those, 2003. Like those were the years you're watching NBA games. Like two best teams were in Texas. Like it's the Spurs and it's the Mavs. Like it should have stayed that way.
Which it did. It did. It still worked out well for the Mavs.
Yeah.
They got a title. Like they could have had a dynasty.
Yeah.
There's a difference.
Those are the greatest what ifs in Mavericks history. What do you think about our list? Did we get it right? Or is there some controversy when it comes, especially the top 2? Let us know when it comes to the top 10 what ifs in Dallas Mavericks franchise history. Appreciate our guy Tanner making us look good and sound good as always. Thank you, sir. That is our Mavericks analyst, Bobby Curl. He's going to go find some tissue and go cry the rest of his tears away after this list today. That is our Mavericks beat writer, Tim Cato. I'm your host, Kevin Gray. We are DLLS Mavs. We'll talk to you next time here on the DLLS Mavs podcast. Y'all be good. We'll talk to you later.
See ya.
Peace.
We all silly like the mayor.